going on, everybody? It's Rich Perez welcoming you back into another dose of The Rundown. We got a special guest in with us today, Division III All American for Brockport, a member of the coaching staff of a legendary Islip High School Buccaneers team, current assistant for Bellport High School, Mr. Robert Cuffie. Coach, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, Rich, man? How you doing, man? Thank you for having me on the show, brother. Truly appreciate it.
It's an honor. It's an honor. I've known you since you were in high school. I was a little kid at the time.
Yeah.
So full circle stuff right here.
Yeah, man.
I mean, we got to start it off right to the beginning. You know, you actually had a little later start into your wrestling journey than a lot of people in today would have. Kind of talk to me about that.
Yeah, you know, I had a later start. I think it was because my older brother, he started wrestling probably about 9 years old, 8, 9 years old. And then when I was like 5 years old, he wanted me to come down one day to a practice. And this is when we were in Bayshore. So, that Bayshore room was tough down there with Coach Hubbard. And, and it was a different time because, back then it wasn't separated. It was more, the older guys with the younger guys. So, whatever coach was giving the older guys, the little guys that were in there were kind of looking like, oh man, this is a little intimidating. So it definitely kind of scared me away for a while. But, I had a couple of, I tried to start early, Rich. I tried to start, ninth grade was like my first year. In Brentwood, ninth grade is a ninth grade center, so it's a middle school. So I started then, I got 6 wrestling matches, which was great. And then in 10th grade, I had an injury. So maybe I wrestled 1 or 2, maybe about six wrestling matches. So my first real year of wrestling was definitely 11th grade.
But you got the ball rolling your junior year. That's when you started seeing some varsity time, correct?
Well, you know what? After 9th grade, which I was surprised, only having 6 matches, I went to the high school and I was the starter in 10th grade. I won my wrestle off. Maybe wrestled, like I said, I wrestled a couple of matches in the season, and I broke my hand. And I was done for the season. Yeah.
Well, I guess hearing that. There's got to be a lot of toughness to come back from adversity like that, especially you're very raw in the sport at that time, having what sounds like a bit of early success. You're coming from a town that's kind of universally known as a tough town to come out of. Do you feel like that background at all, growing up helped you during your journey at this time?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, listen, I grew up in Regis Park in Brentwood. One of the toughest places you can grow up. So, definitely, living in Brentwood and Regis Park, definitely made me tough and hard, So, we always dealt with adversity. We were always used to, being down and getting up and coming back and coming back stronger. You know what I mean? So, absolutely. Yep.
Right. Well, I had interviewed Coach Knapp, who's the current coach of Brentwood High School, during Christmas time, and we got a lot into like the past and everything back when he was an assistant over there. You wrestled for that coaching staff with Coach P as the head coach. I remember those times pretty vividly. How just tough the environment was and everything like that. Talk to me about what it was like being a Brentwood wrestler at that time and what it was like wrestling for Coach P and the rest of that staff.
Oh man, it was an honor, and I tell you, there was no better staff around. I mean, we had, I want to say 5 or 6 coaches in a room, and with all different personalities. So, if you weren't able to connect with one, there was another one that you were able to connect with. It was an amazing experience, man. Being in that wrestling room, our wrestling room was super small. We had about 50 guys on the team, and we made the best of what we had, and we worked hard every day. The room was probably about 110, 120 degrees. The floor used to get wet just from how hard we worked and the sweat. There was no ventilation. So, we worked hard in that room, and the coaching staff was great, man. Absolutely great. I couldn't say nothing bad about any of those guys. Those guys were awesome, you know.
So I usually ask a lot of my guests this when I have them on. Some people like they're wrestling and they're just, that's what they do. They just wrestle. And then some people they're just wrestlers. At one point did like you really know that you were a wrestler? Was it during your high school career?
Yeah, you know what, Rich? Like I said, after 10th grade, not being able to wrestle a season, I'm going into my junior year now with probably, honestly, Rich, I want to say maybe 13 matches under my belt. I'm starting my junior year of varsity wrestling with 13 matches under my belt. And, it was a work in progress. I struggled a little bit in the beginning, but I kept getting better. Every match I kept getting better. I kept working hard in the room. And I tell you, man, there was this one match that I wrestled. I never forget this. The kid I was wrestling, he was probably ranked maybe second and third in the county, and, here I am. I wasn't ranked at all. And I end up wrestling the kid, and we went into overtime. And I ended up winning the match. And I don't think anybody expected that from me, and from that day, man, it kind of lit a little fire under me. And I think that's the day I became a wrestler, man, a true wrestler,
Wow. What other things like were like you felt attributed to that success so early? Because like I said, you're pretty raw at this time to start as, obviously you had a little experience early on, but you really got your start as a freshman in high school.
Yeah. Again, man, great coaching. I had coaches that were, like I said, these guys were the best around. I was constantly learning from each one of them. Bob Panarella was a huge influence and mentor to me. He took the time with me, and he made me feel comfortable. He made me feel confident, as well as the other coaches. But credit to my coaches and the guys that used to come back to the room and help out. We had guys like Tommy Holiday, who was a college wrestler, one of the top guys in the country. And he would come down, to the room when he was off from college, and he would come work out, with some of the bigger guys, and he would show us some things. And, he definitely was a part of my success as well, to help me get better. But I also had great wrestling partners in the room. One of my partners was David Rosari. He was a, all state, 220 pounder, as big as they come, and every day he was my workout partner, my drill partner. And it just helped me tremendously.
Right. So your graduating year was 1997, correct?
98.
98.
Yep.
What year did you all county? 97?
Yeah, I all counting in 97. Yep. All counting in 97.
All right, kind of take me through that county tournament, because one thing I talked about with Coach Knapp was, he went on to become the head coach and win 2 county titles, but you guys really set the and even before you guys, when Coach Campbell was the coach there, obviously Brentwood was a powerhouse, but it definitely fell off a bit, and Coach P came in and resurrected it. I told Nappy, if it's the house that Coach Campbell built, is definitely the house that Coach P resurrected. So you guys, those teams are really, even though you guys never won a county title, you guys were always right there clawing at it. Kind of take me through that experience for you guys, and what was the preparation like on those teams, the expectations, and how you guys went about those tournaments, even you specifically.
It was again, man, we had some of the toughest practices, man, that you can imagine, so we knew anytime we wrestled, and no matter what tournament it was, that we were going to be prepared, physically, as well as mentally, and again, I tip my hat off to the coaches for that. So whenever we went into tournaments, we had the utmost confidence and that we would be successful, and the county tournament, it was one of those things where we went out and again, you got these tough kids, from Brentwood that just, they don't care about your name. They don't care about who they're wrestling. They're just going out and they're trying to win, and they're going to give everything they got. And that was our mentality, for me in that county tournament in my junior year, I had some big names in my weight class. I had some tough guys in my weight class. I wasn't even seeded. You know, I ended up losing in the finals of leagues to one of the top guys, and going into the tournament, you know, I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that, you know, if I went out there and I wrestled with the confidence, you know, that my coaches, gave me, that, you know, I was going to be successful. And I just took it one match at a time, and, you know, and the ball just, you know, just kept rolling for me, man. It was a great experience.
Right. You know, so as we just mentioned, you know, all county your junior year, a little bit of a letdown your senior year. You ended up after high school heading over to Nassau Community College to wrestle for Coach Schmidt.
Yeah.
You know, kind of talk to me about what went into that decision. Were you just with the letdown and everything, like, I'm not done, I got something to prove, or was it just always the mentality of, I'm going to continue to wrestle?
You know, Rich, I just had that, you know, I worked so hard, honestly. I worked so hard, you know, my 11th grade year, going into my senior year. And there was a kid on my team, you know, he was a year older than me, a guy named Carlos Restrepo. He was a county champion and all county, you know, all state wrestler his senior year. But I just remember that, you know, that year, you know, going to my senior year, you know, I told Coach Panarello, I said, I want to wrestle freestyle. I want to go with Carlos, you know. And he was like, yeah, I don't know if you're ready for that, you know. And I'm like, listen, Coach, I said, you know, the only way to know if I'm ready is if I try to get, you know, I just try. So with the help of him, he did a lot for me, you know, as far as financially, and helping me get to these tournaments, you know. And I wrestled about 100 matches, man, that off season. Like, no lie, I wrestled so many matches. Carlos Restrepo and I mean, we traveled alone, and we just did our own thing, and we wrestled and we wrestled and wrestled. So I worked really hard, you know, before my senior year, you know. So going into my senior year, you know, I had high expectations, you know, obviously. I felt that I was, you know, the best guy in the weight class, and, you know, sometimes it just doesn't work out that way, you know. And they always talk about, you know, hard work doesn't guarantee success, right? But, you know, I didn't reach that goal of becoming a county champ. You know, I was upset in the quarters, basically losing to a guy who I've never lost to, and I've probably wrestled a dozen times. But, you know, sometimes it just happens that way. And absolutely, you know, I felt that I always had something to prove after that. You know, I wanted more. I wasn't satisfied. So, you know, I went to Nassau Community College, and it was a great experience. It was a great experience there. And again, when I got to Nassau, I had some bumps in the road, man. It was tough. It was really, really tough for me. And being able to wrestle at Nassau and get an education there. And one of the reasons for that is, you know, I had no transportation to get to school every day. You know, so, and this is when I knew, like, I really, really loved wrestling, because I had no transportation to get to school every day. And the money that I received from graduation, I saved all summer, because I knew that there was going to be a chance that I would have to, you know, take a train, bus, or two buses to get to college every day, so that I can pursue, you know, my goal of you know, getting an education and being an athlete, you know. So it was tough, man. It was really tough. And the coaches at Nassau were awesome. Coach Schmidt, Coach Thomas, and Coach Edmonds, man. I couldn't ask for anything better out of those guys. It's an awesome experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy dedication by you too. A lot of kids coming out of high school, 18 years old, they're getting that money, they're spending it on, you know, stupid things and whatnot, just enjoying themselves. For an 18-year-old, that's definitely a mature decision to go about it. You mentioned wrestling for Coach Edmonds over at Nassau, the Division I NCAA champion back in his day. What was it like wrestling for him, and just the experience take me through that experience at Nassau in general? I remember hanging out with you guys at a party and, you know, talking about the teams that you guys had.
Yeah, man. You know, it was a great experience. I mean, Coach Edmonds, I mean, it gets no better. It gets no better than that guy. You know, he's one of those guys where, you know, you come across some wrestlers and some coaches that it's just real hard nosed, especially, you know, when you're at that level, you know, a national champ, you know, like Coach Edmonds. But he was so different than what you would expect. He was very, very compassionate and an emotional guy. You know, he would definitely connect with us, you know, on so many different levels. And it wasn't, you know, the rah-rah yelling and stuff like that, man. I mean, he would actually take the time out to have, you know, heart-to-heart conversations with us. And, you know, he truly cared about his wrestlers. And you know, Rich, man, when you get a coach like that, you know, who's there for you and does all those things for you, man, you know, you'll do anything you can to make that coach happy and proud of you. You know what I mean? So you run through a wall for a guy like that. So he was great in that sense. And you know what? We used to wrestle around every once in a while in practice, man. And those were tough days for me. You know, there was some tough days.
I'm guessing he still had it even in his old age.
Oh, he still had it. You know, he definitely still had it, man. I mean, what was he? He was probably about, man, I don't know. He was definitely in his 30s, early 30s. You know, so he you know, he still had it. He's still an animal. I remember there was some days where I might have got a, you know, a takedown on him or something like that, and it became probably the worst day of my life after that. But you know, those are the moments you live for, man, and it only makes you better. You know, so it was a great experience with those guys.
Right. So you actually ended up taking a layoff following with your time in Nassau before heading to Brockport, right?
Yeah. So again, Rich, you know, like I told you, you know, there were many bumps in the road, you know, going through this process, and you know, I always think about those things, and I always tell myself, you know, this sport was a sport that I truly love, because I think that all the things that I went through in life, you know, with wrestling, man, most guys would have packed it up and said I'm done, you know. So my first year at Nassau, again, it was a struggle getting there every day. And you know what? Before we even go into this, one of the biggest reasons why I was able to get to Nassau and you know, get to school every day was your dad, you know, Uncle Tony. You know, without him, you know, he's played a tremendous role in my life, man. You know, there were times where I didn't have money to get there, and you know what? He would wake up in the morning and he would drive me. He had a red Jeep Cherokee. He would pick me up. He would take me to practice, and a lot of times he would be there to pick me up and take me home. You know, or you know, he would, you know, help me out with some money to get me on the train and bus so that I could get there. So, you know, he definitely played a tremendous part of me being able to get to Nassau and get an education and be successful. But back to you know, to my injuries. So my first year at Nassau, I got hurt. I hurt my back, and you know, slipped a disc in my back, and I actually came back like a week before conferences, which was probably not the smartest thing to do. But I came back. You know, I wasn't in the best shape, you know, but I went anyway. You know, I went to conferences. I ended up taking second at conferences, and I actually lost to the returning national champ, which was actually a good match, you know. And then I went to nationals, lost my first match, and wrestled all the way back to the All American match, man. And I was up like 4-0, and just I didn't have any more in the tank. You know, it was just one of those things where, you know, probably wasn't the smartest decision to come back, but you know, how do you say no when you're in love with the sport? You know, when you love what you do, and you know, it's hard to say no. You know, and then my second year, you know, my sophomore year, it was just one of the worst things that can possibly happen to, you know, to an athlete. You know, I was at nationals, had a great season. You know. Actually beating a couple of Division I All-Americans, you know, out of junior college. So going into nationals, I was like super, you know, confident. You know, I ended up winning conferences, get to nationals, and in the quarterfinals, I was up like 7-1 with probably 25 seconds left, and the guy shot in on me, and I tried to like hip toss him. I hip tossed him to his back, and that was it, man. I tore my adductor from the bone. So I tore my groin from the bone, and, you know, was out, you know, laid out, you know, screaming, and just the worst possible pain that I've ever experienced in my life. And to the point where, you know, my injury time ran out, and the coaches, you know, had to carry me to the middle. And you know what? It just, all the kid had to do was charge me, and you know, I just couldn't even stand. So that was tough for me. Mentally, it was very, very hard. And after that, I didn't think I was going to wrestle ever again. You know, I almost didn't want to wrestle ever again because I felt like, you know, I worked so hard to be where I was, you know, and I was actually, you know, the number one wrestler in the country at the time. And to be at that point and for it to be all taken away the way it happened, it just mentally, it just kind of shut me down for a while, you know. It was tough.
So what's the motivation to come back? What's the motivation to get you to come back, and how did you end up going to Brockport? Because like we mentioned, you took some time away from school and the sport.
Yeah. So it's crazy how this happens, right? So I didn't wrestle after that happened. I mean, I didn't step on a mat over a year and a half, you know, going on 2 years, and it's crazy, you know. I was, you know, my wife and I, we were pregnant at, you know, probably during the end of that season. So, you know, after that happened, we had the baby and everything. And I'm just like, you know what, man, I gotta, obviously I gotta get a job and, you know, I'm gonna work and, you know, I'm not really thinking about wrestling anymore or thinking about college. I'm like, you know, I just gotta make a career. I gotta get, you know, I gotta do something, you know. And I never forget this day. I was in the backyard and I think I was doing like yard work and stuff. And I got a phone call and it was Coach Murray from Brockport. And it's funny because Coach Murray, when I was in 11th grade, when I was, you know, traveling, doing all that wrestling, I ended up wrestling in the Northeast Regionals at Brockport, and which is a very, very tough tournament. And I ended up taking third. I ended up taking third in that tournament, and I lost to actually lost to Damian Hahn in the semifinals. So, I mean, you know what caliber wrestler that guy is, you know, and we had a, you know, really good match. And I remember Coach Murray coming up to me and he's like, listen, you know, you should come to Brockport. And I'm in 11th grade. I'm not really paying any attention to him, you know. I'm like, yeah. I'm yesing him to death, you know. But, you know, so it's crazy because he ended up calling me, you know. And at that point, Rich, it was like, you know, I had a lot of looks at some big time colleges because of all of the, you know, the winning I was doing my sophomore year at Nassau, the guys that I was beating. So I had a lot of interest, and coaches were calling Coach Smith and Coach Edmonds about me. But when that injury happened, I didn't get any more phone calls, you know. And I believe, I mean, I definitely was the best guy in the tournament at the time. But you know what? It just worked out that way. It was like nobody was interested anymore. They thought I was done, and you know, so. But now Coach Murray, man, Coach Murray called me. He got me on the phone. He's like, hey, listen, he's like, you know, I want you to come to Brockport. He's like, you don't got to fill out any paperwork. Just be here in 2 weeks. I'm just like, nah, man. I'm like, I said, I'm done. You know, I got a kid now. I said, you know, I'm just trying to, you know, work and get things together over here. And it's crazy because when I hung up with him, you know, my wife, she asked me who it was, and I told her, you know, who it was, and she's like, well, what did you say? I said, no. I said, I'm not going away. She's like, well, I think it'd be the best thing for us, you know, if you went away and got an education and you know, this way, you know, when you're done, you know, things would be really good for us. So I ended up going. Yeah, man. I ended up going to Brockport, and it was definitely the toughest thing that I've ever had to do in my life. You know, be away from my family and go, you know, 7 hours away and go to school and try to compete with a clear head. You know what I mean? It was really tough.
Right. You know, number one, the power of a woman, but also, you know, obviously that's a big step too, and you're wrestling for a coach with, you know, a ton of accolades as far as coaching goes. Murray had been there for, you know, over a decade, maybe even plus at that time. I mean, he's still there to this day. So, you know, Tate, you know, what was it like wrestling for Coach Murray?
You know, Coach Murray's tough. You know, he's one of those guys that, you know, when he says something, you know, it needs to be done. You know, he's not with the horseplay. It was really, really tough, but I think it was something. It was a blessing for me. It was something that I needed. You know, you know, his rules and the way he runs his teams up there was perfect for me. You know, I a person who was there for business. I was there to get an education. I was there to, finish up with wrestling and get out of there as fast as I could. And, thanks to him, it happened. He was a guy that we had mandatory room checks. We had curfew at 10 o'clock every night. We had mandatory study halls. I mean, he made our schedule to the point where we barely had any free time, and it was good. It was good for me, and it helped me stay focused. And he, as tough as he is, he was very, very, very good with me when it came to things like, my family and stuff like that. Me going home and being with my family and stuff like that, or having them come up. And he was very, very good, and he surprised me with that, man. And I'm always grateful to Coach Murray because without him, I don't know where I would be right now.
Yeah, and I've always heard the things about him too, about different how strict he was with the bed checks. And, I've heard things you're not even allowed to have a girlfriend while you're on his teams. What you got any crazy stories with Coach Murray while you were up there? Because I got to imagine that's dealing with a lot of what comes with wrestling him is stuff that you've never experienced before.
Yeah, man. I mean, I got a million stories, man. We'll be here all night talking about that guy. But one thing about him is he goes to bat for his wrestlers. I mean, if you're one of his guys, you're one of his guys, and there is nothing that he wouldn't do for you. Anything that I ever needed, he was always there for me. But there were nights where he's one of those guys where I would play pranks on him. I would crank call him, and disguise my voice and just do a bunch of crazy things, to him and to get him to laugh. And you know what? I was different with him. I was a different kid. I was a little older, so he showed me a lot of respect. But I also got away with a lot of things that other guys wanted to get away with. Just all the pranks and stuff that I did. I did to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So I know you racked during your college career. You had a lot of matchups, with high caliber guys. You lost a tight match to Kyle Seminara, who ended up being an All-American for Buffalo. You beat Matt Greenberg, who was another All-American for Cornell. Yeah. You beat Chris Weidman. We definitely got to talk about the Chris Weidman story. And you also had a win over Rashad Evans, right?
Yeah, that was like some freestyle stuff, that we wrestled. I think when he was in college, I was a little bigger than him. He was a 74-pounder. He ended up wrestling one of my teammates in the finals of JUCOs one year, Chris Rosenberger. But yeah, those guys, man. I wrestled, some tough dudes in my career, and I also had some good wins. Even with the Seminara, he was I think he's the only All-American ever come out of Buffalo. He was, Division All-American, but, we met twice. We met once in the Oklahoma tournament at Brockport, which was a tough tournament. I mean, there were guys from, it was Oklahoma and Ohio State, Cleveland State, UPenn. I mean, it was a huge tournament. And him and I met in the finals and then we met in the finals again at the States, college States. Yeah.
So, take me through that match. I know that was a match that we've talked about, a couple of times. I know you said my dad was actually in the corner for that one.
Yeah.
Murray. So take me through that one.
Well, it was almost a repeat of the finals of the Oklahoma tournament. We went into overtime criteria, double, whatever, triple overtime, and he ended up edging me out in the Oklahoma tournament. And in the state finals, I came out, right away. I took him down. And by the way, both times we wrestled, I got the only takedown. It was never, I got the only takedown in the match. So coming out in the finals of states, I took him down right away, and he got out, and we're wrestling, and then I went down, and I didn't get out, which was surprising because I always got out. It was kind of one of those things, and I think it was one of those things where I just kept standing up, and I got mat return. I probably stood up about 16, 17 times, and it was just one of those mat returns, and before I knew it, the match was over. But it was it was a great match, and he was a tough kid, and we both respected each other. He was a very very nice person. person after the match. We spoke a little bit. I see him to this day. We speak. So he's a good person, man. But he was tough. He was definitely tough, and he had one of those styles that was hard for me. Hard for me to compete with. You know what I mean?
Right. And during the same tournament is when you wrestled Chris Weidman, correct?
Yeah. So I wrestled Chris.
We gotta go into the whole story, Cuff. We gotta talk about the whole thing.
Oh man. So I don't know, man. So I had some guys still at Nassau, that I was friends with, and they kept coming up to me telling me, this guy's saying this, he's gonna do this to you, he's gonna do that, and I'm just like, whatever, man. We do what we got to do when we get on the mat, and it got me to the point where I kind of get I was getting upset because all the guys kept coming up to me saying what this guy's he's telling them he's gonna do to me. So before the match, I go over to shake Coach Edmonds and Coach Smith's hand, and Coach Edmonds he said something like, "You ready? You sure you ready for this?" And I don't know my response. I had like a smart response. I'm like, Coach, there's no solution, man. He's like, what do you mean by that? I said, there's no solution to beating me. I said, you can't train for me. I said, whatever he says he's gonna do, he's not gonna do. We go out there and we start wrestling, and I end up winning the match, but it was he's a tough kid, man. He's definitely a tough kid. And, at the time, I was probably a little more experienced than him. It worked in my advantage, but, it was a great match, man. It was some great memories. And, today, him and I, we're friends. We see each other, and it's always the utmost respect, man. I respect what that guy does and, what he's done, with his wrestling career and as well as his UFC career. He's just, he's a great success story. He's a great kid.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed Charles Griffin, who was a teammate of his for 2 years at Hofstra, and he called him a gamer. And I mean, watching his career, that's exactly what it was. But I bring a lot of that stuff up just to admit, you're a guy who high caliber wins and everything like that. But finally, the pinnacle is to get on that podium, and you were able to do that during your time at Brockport. Kind of talk to me a little bit about getting to that point.
Rich, going into my junior year, going to nationals, it was one of those things where, you walk into the building and it's just like, all those memories start to come back from, when I was at Nassau. Sometimes you start to second guess yourself a little bit. And, but I got there and me having those thoughts in my head and kind of doubting myself a little bit, kind of got the best of me in the first match. My first match, I lost my first match. I was wrestling a kid from college in New Jersey. He was a tough kid, and it was like 3-3 in the match, and he had a riding point, and I don't know what happened. Like they didn't put the point up on the board or whatever it was, but I thought it was tied. I thought we were gonna go into overtime, and I ended up losing the match. And it was 10 seconds left, and Coach Murray's telling me to shoot. He's like, shoot. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, I'm just going to go into overtime. I'm going to take this guy down. And I was wrong, man. The score was 4-3. The ref raised his hand, and it was a tough blow. And walking off the mat, before I can even get off the mat, Coach Murray, he met me at the end of the mat. And, I thought he was going to be like, it's all right, you get the next one. But he kind of lit me up, man. He lit me up. He told me, he goes, I can't use the words that he actually said, but he's like, he always talked to the wrestling team about, being an All American. Being an All American is so important, because when you go to interview for a job and you put that on your resume, you're probably going to get the job over most people that are interviewing, against you. And when I walked off the mat, he goes, I'm so disappointed in you. He goes, you let another man take food off your daughter's plate. And that's what he told me, because, he basically was saying, if you don't become an All-American, it's going to kind of be a little harder for you to get a job. And when he said that to me, something just clicked in my head, man. It just clicked in my head. And every match after that, man, I just kept beating guys. I beat guys and I beat guys and I beat guys and I was just on a roll. I was beating returning All Americans and guys. Nobody knew who I was because I've been out of the game for a little while. And here I am. And I remember my All American match and wrestling a guy. He was like returning 2 or 3-time All American and from Ohio. And we had this thing in the wrestling room with Coach Murray. He would spin us to death. I'm sure you heard about it, right? We used to do a spin drill.
Yeah.
And everybody hated it. And he would spin us sometimes for 50 minutes straight, 50 minutes, and everybody hated it. And in that match, that All-American match, I was down 2-1 with about 7 seconds left. And I go for an inside trip. And the way we landed like in a front head position. And I just remember spinning. And I was spinning, and the guy was trying to square with me, trying to square up. And I was so much faster than him because I spun every day in the room. And I ended up becoming an All-American basically off a spin drill. And wow. I looked at Coach Murray after that, and he just smiled at me because he knew, and that was just the feeling that I got. The feeling of becoming an All-American that day was just, I can't even explain it, man. It was something that I worked so hard for, something that I always wanted to be. And, through the bumps in the road that I had, I wasn't able to get to that point. I wasn't able to be All-American my sophomore and freshman year. So becoming an All-American, my junior year after taking all that time off, man, it was the greatest feeling in the world,
Right. Just watching it as a fan, seeing what guys, the feeling of finally getting on that podium is just watching it is different. So I can only imagine what it is to go through it. You end up, finishing your college career, get your degree and everything. Did you know right away that you were going to get into coaching?
Oh, absolutely. I think I owed it, to everyone to get back to get into coaching. I actually coached a year at Brockport before I came home. So I coached a year at Brockport. I came home and I did my student teaching in Islip. And that's how I got hooked in Islip. Coach Panarello, my high school coach, was the athletic director over there. So I got in and do my student teaching over there. And then I got hooked right in to coaching at Islip.
Right. We were talking about those Islip teams. You were a part of a dynasty, not just a dynasty, but a dynasty that I don't think we've ever seen since. The teams that Coach Joe Patrovich put together were unreal. I'm talking back-to-back county titles. You had Tyler Maskell, Ryan Patrovich, the Wades, so on and so forth. Talk to me about that experience, getting on that staff and, what were you guys doing as a staff to prepare these guys for what they ended up accomplishing, and what was it like being a part of that?
Well, me just coming in, I missed the one team, the 05 team, where they had 9 county finalists. But I came right in after the 05, 06 team. So we had, the Lance Wade, Ryan Patrovich, Tyler Maskell, Paulie Babe, Christian Wintons, and we had a lot of other guys, LaMonica's. There was just so many tough kids on that team, and it was unbelievable. That wrestling room was unreal when it was time to go live. The way these kids wrestled and how hard these kids went was just something that I've never seen, man. It was crazy. It was a crazy experience, to be a part of that. And so when I first started there, I started coaching in a middle school. But before the middle school team started, I would stay inside that. I would come down to the high school room every day, and I would work out with the upper weights and stuff like that. And I would just pick Coach Patrick's brain, him and Steve Ari, man, and Coach Ferraro was in the room then. I would just pick their brains, and I would always try to, just see what type of things, the type of techniques they were teaching, so that I could bring them down to the middle school level and kind of prepare those guys, for when they came up. I think that's very important. I think that's very important in the program when you can get kids ready in the middle school level, so that when they get to the high school, they have all the techniques already, and it just kind of flowed when they got there. It wasn't much catching up to do. But, those rooms, man, that room, Coach Patrovich is just, he's unbelievable, man. When you talk about technician, that guy, he was ahead of the game. He was ahead of the game. I'm a guy straight out of college, and he was doing things, he was teaching things that I was like, wow, like I was actually learning from and picking up, and just the way he ran his program, the type of person he was, the way he connected to all the kids, and he was a mentor to me, and I'm so grateful to be able to coach under him and be with the guy in the room, because I learned so much, and I use those techniques and those strategies to this day.
Yeah, I mean, I had his son Mike on last week actually, and the one thing that he mentioned about Coach Patrovich is he called him a drill master. That's pretty on board for what he's talking about.
Everything was, it was, I mean, it was organized. I mean, we had a worksheet, we had a practice schedule every day, from the minute. I mean, you know what I mean? We were doing, time, we're doing this, we're doing that. Everything was just, it was every day, we had a routine that we would do. And, again, he just the way he did things and the way he went about doing things. And again, he was one of those guys where, he'll do anything for you, take the shirt off his back, even for me, I was a part of the coaching staff, but he, I was a young guy in the room, and he was like a father figure to me. He done so much for me, outside of the sport of wrestling. And we became really close, man. We became really close, and I'm so happy and blessed, to have the privilege to be in that room with Coach Patch and Coach Ferrara and Coach Aries, man. It was great.
Right. And your story as far as coaching goes is kind of similar to Coach Knapp's, and what he was telling me as far as being a part of the staff as well as coaching middle school, and then picking the varsity coaching staff's brains and bringing it back to the middle school. And then he in turn ended up becoming the head coach. That actually kind of came into play for you as well. Kind of talk to me about how you became the head coach at Islip, and what was going through your head at that time when you got the job.
Oh man, I mean, my nerves were, it was nerve-wracking, man. Taking over for Coach Patrovich, man, huge shoes to fill. And it was just one of those things where I kind of doubted myself in the beginning. I wasn't sure that I was able to do it, but after talking to Coach Patch, and he believed in me so much. He said, Cuff, he said, you're going to be fine, man. And basically what I did was I did everything that we were doing. I didn't change anything. At times I added some of my own stuff in to what we were doing, but he was just, I mean, I just did everything he did. I really didn't change much, and, we still continue to be successful, but it was tough though. It was really tough because I think that year, I didn't have an assistant coach, which is, I mean, if you can believe that, right? So yes. I got 50 kids on my team, and I actually wanted to bring, Chris Wade in. Chris Wade would, to be my assistant coach, and that whole thing fell through. And what happened was I never really got an assistant coach. Steve Aries, he told me, he would help me out. He would come in, Coach Panarella would come in the room every once in a while. But, it was a really, really tough year coaching there, because I did everything. I basically had to do everything, by myself. And yeah, it was scary. But, we made it, and we worked hard. Those kids worked hard. And, that year I actually had 2 county finalists, which was awesome, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's a testament to how great of a coach you were too. I mean, that's something I've seen at the forefront. And your accolades as well. You coach county champions as well as all state wrestlers. So
yeah. But Coach Patch, after that first year, Coach Patrovich, obviously, we remained close. We spoke every day, and Coach Patch, listen, man, he was coaching for a long time, and he took a break, and and then one day, after the season, we went out to dinner and we talked and we spoke, and I sat with him, and just the way we were talking about wrestling, I could tell that he missed it. He missed being at Islip and coaching those guys, and and being that I had so much respect for him, and I love the guy like a father. I sat down with him and said, "Hey, Coach, listen, man," I said, "why don't you come back? Why don't you come back and I'll be your assistant again." I said, and when you really want to leave, then you can leave and I'll take over again. Because to me, being a head coach, man, that I'm not one of those guys, man. I don't need to be a head coach. I know what I bring to the table. I know that to me, it's all about the kids, man. It's all about the kids and getting the best out of these kids. And you can do that being a head coach or an assistant coach. But Coach Pacevich, I mean, he built that program from the ground up, and I felt it was only right because I can tell he missed it. And it was only right for me. Just sit down with him and say, hey, coach, listen, man, why don't you come back? I enjoy being your assistant coach. Plus, I was almost burnt out after 1 year being doing it by myself. But I'm like, why don't you come back, man? We always had a great time together. It was so much fun with him, being able to coach with him, man. It was a great time. So, him coming back was huge for me. We had a great year when he came back. We had so much fun, and it was, I think he was happy with the decision he made,
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I mean, and of course, he comes back, spends a couple more time as the head coach. A ton of success for you guys there. You end up taking over again, like you said. Spent a couple years over there, coach up Kyle Wade to a state title, actually.
Yeah.
And just tremendous success from your part over there. But then you actually decided to walk away and head over to Bellport. You had a ton of stock in Islip. What goes into a decision like that?
So the 1 year, so then I coached Kyle Wade. He became he was state champion that year. And then the next year I had that one team in 2015, and little Brad Wade was on the team. And I mean, we had a tough group of kids that year too, tough group of kids. Actually, Coach Mike Newell came in, who was one of my high school coaches, who was, again, another guy who played a major role in me being successful, in the sport of wrestling and in life. He decided to come on and be my assistant, and it was great, man. This year, that year I had an actual assistant coach that was helping me, and he was huge, man. He was huge. He's a big guy on discipline and structure, and that was somebody that I needed. He was perfect for the job, and so we ended up having a great year. Brad Wade took third in the state. So it was a great year. And then after that, I decided to go over to Bellport, and what went into that was, as far as job security. I was a dean of students at Islip High School for many years. But every year, it was like a 0.8 position. Every year I would get accessed, and then they'd bring me back in, and it just wasn't. Financially, it wasn't the best situation for me. And, I did it for years. I did it for many years, and stuck around because of the kids. I love my boys in, the wrestling program, and I kind of sucked it up, and I did extra, I worked other jobs just to kind of make up money for the money that I wasn't making there. And just so I can be with these boys. But, at some point you got to kind of wake up and say, is this the best thing for my family and myself, and, that was a decision I had to make. And it was one of the toughest decisions I ever made in my life, to stand in front of my boys and tell them that, I'm not going to be returning the next year, was tough. And they took it hard, they really did. And, it kind of broke me a little bit, but, I told them I'll always be there for them. And I always, till this day, these guys can pick up the phone and we still have relationships. And, I talk to these guys on the phone, or I see them out, and, we have, good times together. But they understood that I needed to do what was right for my family. And so I took the job over at Bellport. Yeah, man. And it was, once I got there, it was just one of those things where I kind of had a breath of relief, man, because I knew that that I had job security, and that's what was important to me. I had a tenure track position, and so I was able to kind of breathe a little bit and say, all right, you know what, I may not have the team that I have, but I got job security, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. And I can help build this team up, to be as good as those teams from Islip.
Right. I mean, you come into that situation at Bellport, another type of building from the ground ups type of situation. Yeah. I mean, watching those teams, even like your first year there, you see your imprint, right away. Talk to me about like a little bit of the difference there and what it's like coming into a situation where you're pretty much starting over.
Well, it was definitely tough, especially the first year there. You know, we were probably forfeiting 5 weight classes every match. So right away we were giving them 30 points to every team we wrestled. And, it was hard to win like that. It was really hard to win. And, it was a program where, as far as wrestling, man, people weren't buying into the program. One day you see a kid, the next day you won't. One of those types of things. So it was very tough, man. It was very hard to adjust to that. But I knew that I was stepping into a good coaching staff. Coach Mags and Coach Fabian, man, those guys are amazing dudes. They were awesome, and I knew that. That if we all work together, we would build a successful program. I was like the last piece to the puzzle, and it worked out perfect, man.
So what are the goals coming in for for the Bellport wrestling program now?
Every year the goals get bigger and bigger, right? So the first year was, after this year let's try to at least go 500, in the league. And then we do that, and then we actually exceeded that. We ended up taking second in the league to Esports South Meta, who at that time was probably the number 1, 2, top 3 team in the state. And I remember actually wrestling them in the dual meet. We were actually winning about, I think it was like 30-0. We were up like 30-0 on them, and I knew that coming back around that they were going to edge us out. But it was good to see. It was finally good to see, a coach come into that gymnasium and actually have to bite his nails a little bit, and be a little nervous because, the year before that, it was like, other coaches would come into the room and it was almost like, they weren't taking us serious. They were laughing and, it was almost like, yeah, we're going to beat these guys and go home. But, every year, after that, I started to see people, they really didn't want to be in that gymnasium with us. We started getting better and better and better. We started getting more guys to come out for the team, and, coaches and I, we put our heads together and try to figure out, the best ways to help these guys become more successful. And it was tough, man. It was really tough, but, I'm happy with, where we are right now. And, we've been really successful,
Right. Well, I actually got you on in an interesting time. It's been announced here that, high school sports, the high risk sports will now be able to resume. I know you guys haven't been able to get into the wrestling room because of the restrictions that were put in place. What can you tell me anything about what's going on now with the high school season, specifically with you guys?
Yeah. So it's crazy. It's crazy how, 1 minute you're not wrestling, the season's not going to happen. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, we're wrestling tomorrow. It's a little bit of anxiety as a coach, because it's like, you as much as you want to wrestle, you kind of get into the mindset of, you know what, the season's not really going to happen, and you kind of get in a different mode mentally. And then all of a sudden they just spring it on you. And it's like, especially with, a school like Bellport, to get these kids to commit to something just out of nowhere, it's going to be tough. And I think it's going to be tough for a lot of programs. It's going to be tough for a lot of programs. And I'm sure a lot of coaches, are high in anxiety right now because, again, just all the things that are going to go into this. There's going to be a short season. I think it's going to be a 4-week season. We're going to wrestle, I think, 2 dual meets a day. We're going to cram, a league dual meet season into 3 or 4 weeks. And, that's, it's going to be pretty hard to do, especially with all the COVID stuff going on. You never know what you're going to have. You never know what you're going to have. I mean, 1 minute you can have a full lineup and the next minute, you got 3 kids on your team quarantining. It's going to be tough. And you know what, I think, for a lot of kids, it's going to be heartbreaking, because the reality is, whether it's going to be in a wrestling room or, I don't know what these kids are doing outside of school. If you come across somebody that has COVID and, it's reported, that's 14 days and you're out. Now, 14 days, being out 14 days from a 4-week season, man. I mean, you know what I mean? It's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. So we got to just try to make the best of it. Be positive. Honestly, it's better than not having a season. To me, you know, it's better than having nothing.
Right.
You know, my guys worked really hard. A lot of my guys went to camps and stuff like that. You know, thanks to who, Uncle Tone. You know, Uncle Tone has been a major support of the Bellport wrestling program. You know, he's done a lot for my guys within the short time that I've been there. You know, he sees a lot of potential in these boys, and my boys love him to death. You know, they love him. They love to see him at matches and hearing his voice. You know, so these guys, a lot of these guys are prepared to go, but again, who knows what's going to happen? You know, 1 minute you could be wrestling, the next minute you could be quarantining, and that's going to be heartbreaking for a kid, and it's going to be heartbreaking for teams. Teams that are looking to win a league title. God forbid something like that happens. Now, you're forfeiting, 2, 3, 4 weight classes, and it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, just on a different level, the Penn State Nittany Lions, they missed their first two competitions because of COVID complications with COVID. As far as tracing and things like that go. What are you kind of telling these guys in preparation for this?
Honestly, Rich, I haven't really had much time to even talk to the guys. We found out. We found out the other day, and you got to remember, there's a lot of kids in school right now that are remote learners. So we haven't really even seen many kids. So actually what I've been doing today, I've been reaching out to kids personally. I've been calling parents and talking to them a little bit, but we haven't even had conversations with the boys. There's been a few boys that come down to the weight room. But we plan on having a meeting either tomorrow or Friday, just to talk to the boys a little bit about, what it's going to be and things like that. But again, we're going to explain the same thing to them. We're going in here, we're going to compete. I know it's 4 weeks, but it's not going to change, the way we work and how we go about things. We're going to go out there with the intentions of winning another league title, a third league title, which is something that's, never been done in Bell. I think winning 2 league titles in a row back to back was something that's never been done. Having an undefeated dual meet season, but just to win a third one. For these seniors that are back, I got a lot of seniors this year. Something that these guys work so hard for, and for a lot of these guys, this is all they have. This is what they have. A lot of these guys are, banking on this wrestling, to help them get to college, and they want to compete in college. So we're gonna make the best of what we have with this season. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is. It's just we can be back in the room. We can feel a little bit of normalcy. For a long time, man. It's just been crazy. So life's gonna feel a little more normal for a little while in that wrestling room, and I think it's gonna be a good time, man. I'm just hoping that everybody's healthy and everybody stays safe. That's it.
Yeah, I definitely second that. Coach, before we get out of here, is there anything else you want to give us?
Man, Rich, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you again. I watched you grow from a young kid, back in your wrestling days, and I'm super proud of you, man, of the success you've become. I know this summer, we got a chance to get a little closer, bond a little bit, working together, and you're an amazing kid, man, and I wish you luck and continued success with your podcast, man. This is awesome.
I appreciate that a ton, man. It means a lot coming from you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. So it is Coach Robert Cuffie. It is Rich Perez, and we will see you guys next time.
All right, brother.